What's up, everybody? It's Pac-Man from Drunk Monkey Garage. Welcome back to the second mailbox project. Up to this point, we have sprayed the blue candy and flames with some stars on the front. Taped all that off and taped off a second set of flames, which we are going to do in the Limelight Candy Red. Mix this using their base coat binder and the Limelight Candy Red concentrate. So you mix 70% of the binder, 30% of the candy concentrate, and then you reduce all that 1-to-1, and that gives you your candy mixture. So I've got this all taped off. I didn't film any of that because that's just a normal taping everything off. So I did that off camera. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean this with a good water-based glass cleaner. And then we're going to get in the booth and spray the candy red for the second set of flames. Okay, we'll give that a few minutes to evaporate, then we'll get the mask and get to spraying. Gonna be using the Gallery Mobius TG again. It's a great little gun for this kind of project. And it sprays a good 3-inch pattern. So it's perfect for these small jobs like this, where you don't want to put too much paint on and you want to layer it gradually. So let's get the mask on, I'll get the gun hooked up, and we'll get to spraying. Here you can see that drip I was talking about. This is basically because this adapter was not intentionally made for this airbrush. So I'm going to go clean this off real quick and we'll get back to it. So I was able to fix the leaking adapter. What I did was, it had this O-ring at the point where it screws into the airbrush. So I took that O-ring off and replaced it with some Teflon tape. And that seemed to do the trick, and I don't have any more leakage. So, unfortunately, I did not prep this well enough when I did the blue flames. And when I peeled the tape off of them, the blue candy came with it. So we're going to take some 400 and a DA and sand this back down to the silver metal flake and try it again. And this is exactly why we do the clear coat after we finish each stage. That way we can sand back to this and begin again without messing up any of the previous layers. I think what happened is after I clear coated the metal flake, I wasn't aggressive enough with my grit when I sanded the clear, when I locked that down. So the blue flaked right off of the clear. I went in with a 400 this time. That should give it a good bite. So I'm going to tape the flames off again, and we're going to try it again. We'll tape the blue flames off first, and then we'll unmask that, clear it, and then we will let that dry, and then sand it again, and then do the red ones. So this is a perfect example. If you don't prep things properly, you're gonna have to start over and try again. So I'm gonna get started with that, and I'll catch up with you when I'm ready to spray the blue flames. So we've got the blue flames taped off again. What I'm going to do now is clean everything again and hit this part with a little bit of Scotch-Brite just to make sure it's got a good enough bite for the candy to bite into. Got my candy blue mixed up. Got my flames taped off. We're going to use the Lil Beast with a 0.8 tip. Spray the candy blue over the flames. Give it about 3 or 4 coats, depending on the coverage we get. And then we're going to let that dry, peel the tape, and put a protective coat of clear on that after everything's dry. All right, so we've had a few problems with the candy flames lifting up when I would tape them off. I think we've got most of that repaired. I want to thank Jeremy Diamond over at Diamond Custom Paints for giving me some pointers on how to get the candy to stick better. Part of the problem was when I cleared the silver metal flake, I didn't sand it back good enough and it wasn't completely smooth. So the candy was just peeling right off of it when I would pull the tape. As you can see, I've got overlapping flames. So when I would tape off the blue to paint the red, I would pull the tape off and the blue would come up with the tape. But we've got that issue figured out. I touched up a bunch of this with my Gallery Precision airbrush. It's the Ace Series GHAC 98. It's a 0.38 tip. This is a really good airbrush for touching up small areas. The larger areas, I used the Mobius TG fan pattern airbrush. So airbrushes do come in handy even if you don't use them for your main work. They're good for touch-ups and small areas, adding details. So it's always a good tool to have in your toolbox. So what we're going to do now is we're going to clean this off with a water-based glass cleaner. We're going to get that cleaned up, get it in the booth, and we're going to mix up some 4:1 2K clear coat and get some clear on this thing. I'm going to start off with a light tack coat and just get that tacked up, and then we'll put 2 to 3 good wet coats of clear on this and try to smooth everything out. So that about does it for this mailbox. We've got the clear on it. We've got the double flames. We put the stars on the front. And I know what you're thinking. Hey, Pac-Man, you skipped a lot of steps and you didn't film everything. Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. This was just one of those projects where it fought me from the very beginning. You're going to have that. The other thing is, this was not a tutorial. What this was me taking you through my journey of learning how to do something new. I've never done double layers of candy before, and it was quite a learning experience. We used the same mailbox that we did with the crystal with the candy green over it. That mailbox, if you can recall that video, that mailbox had ridges in it. So the first thing we did with this was we put a high build primer surfacer on it. I used the Limeline. It's a 2K high build primer. We use that to smooth out all the edges. Got it nice and smooth so that we didn't have the ridges in it when we finished our paint job. The second thing I did was I gave it a base coat of coarse silver from Limeline. That gave me a good base to put my metal flake on. The metal flake I used was the 0.004 silver flake from Limeline. It's a nice flake. It's got a nice sparkle to it. It's got just a hint of iridescence to it, so you get some different colored sparkles out of it. It's really cool. It's a good flake. I like it. After we did that, we laid down a couple of coats of protective clear. I used the Motor City Clear Coat by TranStar. That's a good overall clear. By no means is it the best top quality clear, but I've always had good luck with it and it's treated me well. That being said, the last video showed where I taped off the flames and sprayed the blue candy. The blue candy is also from Limelight. It's a candy concentrate that you mix with a clear base coat binder. We got that all taped off. I used the Mobius TG with a 0.5 tip and the PPS adapter. That worked out really well. It laid the color down nice and everything. So after that, I put another protective coat of clear on it and taped off the blue so that we could paint the red. I also used the Mobius TG for the red. That worked out really well. But unfortunately, when I went to pull the tape off of the blue, it peeled a lot of the blue with it. At that point, I ended up sanding everything back down to the silver metal flake and retaping everything and going with a coarser grit to sand down the clear that was protecting the metal flake. I believe the first time I sprayed the candies, I didn't go with a coarse enough grit to give the candies enough to bite into, so it just peeled right up. At that point, I taped off the flames again. Gotta say, I'm getting a lot better at taping flames. I had a lot of practice on this part. I resprayed the blue. I did not put clear coat over it. I just taped it off and taped everything off so I could spray the red. Peeled that up. It did peel again a little bit. Not as bad as the first time. At that point, I went in with my other trigger style airbrush, which is the Bucasso from Amazon. This has a round tip on it. I was able to use that. It's a 0.5, I believe. But I was able to use that to brush in some more candy in the spots where it peeled up. It's not perfect, but it's a Mailbox. It was a project for me to learn on, and I did learn a lot. The things I learned are, number one, when you're clearing over flake, you need to make sure that you put enough coats on to bury that flake and still have enough to sand it back for your next layer. You want to be able to sand that back and leave it coarse enough for the next layer of paint to bite into. Otherwise, you're going to have peeling problems, especially with candies. Candies are a tricky thing to learn. They act a little differently than a lot of other paints. They definitely act a little different than your regular base coats, and they're not as durable as a flake sprayed in a clear. So you got to be careful, and you got to really plan out and think about how you're going to tape things off to spray your candies. Ideally, you want your candy to be the last layer that you spray so that you don't have to tape over it and you don't have to worry about it peeling up. That being said, the red was the last layer that I did, and it by far turned out to be the best. The blue, I got a pretty good match with the airbrush spraying in my repairs, because I went to the full color on the blue. I sprayed it, got full saturation until you had as dark of a color as it's going to get. With candies, you spray to a point, it's not going to get any darker. It's going to be as dark as it's going to be. And that's what I did with the blue originally, so making repairs was a little bit easier. If I had faded that from dark to light, it would have been much harder to try to match that up and repair it. If you haven't learned how to use an airbrush, or you're intimidated by it, you're doing custom paint, I highly suggest you grab a couple of inexpensive airbrushes and play around with them, because they will help you in your custom painting, if nothing else, just for touch-ups. I've only been doing airbrushing for about a year now, and I may, after this cures and I get it sanded down and polished, I may go in and do some detail work with the airbrush. We'll see about that. But I do highly suggest the Gallery. The Gallery brand of airbrushes. Every airbrush I have gotten from them has been very high quality, very well made, easy to maintain, and they aren't too awfully expensive. I believe this one here is around 50 bucks. The more precise one is around 60 bucks. And I think I paid 110 for the TG. So they're definitely worth picking up and playing around with and learning how to use. If nothing else, like I said, just for small repair areas. And once you learn how to detail with them, it brings your paint work to a whole different level. So thanks for following along through my learning process using candy paints. If you have any tips for me or the other viewers, or questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to put them in the comments. While you're there, go ahead and like and subscribe, and hit that bell icon for notification of future videos. I think what's up next is we're going on one last ride on the Street Glide tomorrow. And after that, I'm going to start tearing that apart and getting it cleaned up and prepped for the Lumalore and Candy graphics that we're going to be putting on that. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Until next time, cheers.